Okay, I'm going to talk you through assessment criteria 1.2. 1.2 is looking at the organisation of the criminal justice system within England and Wales. In particular, what you need to know is the various different agencies that make up the criminal justice system. So that's the police, the courts, the prison service, CPS, probation service, voluntary groups, campaign pressure groups. And you need to know how each one works and how they interrelate with each other. There's always questions about the role of the police or the role of the CPS or the role of the prison service. And there's also lots of questions in the exam quite often about how they work together. So for the purposes of this PowerPoint, what I'm going to do is going to take you through specifically the police, talk you through a little bit about the police, what their main role is, the different branches of the police, and then look at how they interact with the other agencies of social control or agencies of the criminal justice system. Okay, so let's start first of all with the key role of the police. And I've taken this statement from the Independent Committee of Inquiry into the roles and responsibilities of the police. It's a common exam question which says, what is the role of the police? And this statement says, well, the purpose of the police is to uphold the law, prevent crime, pursue and bring to justice those who break the law, and keep the Queen's peace, protect the community. And that really is what the police are all about. But you can break it down a little further than that. So for instance, you could say in an exam question they're responsible for enforcing the criminal law. So government, as we know, or judges set the law, and then it's up to the police to enforce those laws. The other thing you might want to put in an answer is the fact that the police will always be the first agency to become involved once someone is suspected of committing a crime. They will always be the first on the scene. And of course, once they've got on the scene, their key role is to investigate that crime and then charge the suspect. Now, the key thing here is charge, because in reality, the people that bring the case to court are actually the Crown Prosecution Service. So they will charge. Okay, and just to clarify, also quite important to realise that investigating a crime involves a number of different things, such as collecting evidence, arresting and detaining suspects, questioning, obtaining statements from suspects and witnesses. Now, the other thing you also need to be aware of is that in minor cases, the police do have some powers, so they can issue a caution or a fixed penalty notice. So if I am pulled over on the motorway for exceeding the speed limit, I will be issued with a fixed penalty notice. So I could sit in the police car, and if I have my driving licence, my insurance details and a debit card on me, I could actually pay my fine on the spot to the policeman just by handing over my card. So I will get £100 fine and 3 points on my licence automatically, and that would be on the spot there and then, and that is a power that the police do have. But the reality is the vast majority of cases, once they've been investigated, once the police are happy they've got enough evidence, they will then go to the Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS, and it's them that make the decision whether to prosecute or not. I'll be dealing with the Crown Prosecution Service in another separate PowerPoint. Another key thing you need to be aware of is how the police are funded. There's quite often a question in the exam on how police are funded, so you need to know how that breaks down. So in the year 2018 to 19, the total police budget was £12.3 billion. So how was that 12.3 billion made up? Well, 8.6 of it was funded by central government. And when we say it's funded by central government, the reality is it's funded by me or you, the taxpayer, through income tax, value-added tax, whatever taxes we tend to pay. So that is the main income for the police. They're centrally funded by the taxpayer. However, it's also important to realise that the police are also funded through council tax contributions. So they will make, I'll show you in a minute my council tax statement, which shows you how much I pay towards the police. Also, the police can charge for some services, such as every time you go to see Argyll, for instance, the police will be there. Argyll will pay the police to police those football matches. So they will make money that way. It's worth also noting that counter-terrorism policing and capital projects, so that's building projects, are funded separately and aren't in that budget. So for purposes of an exam question, they're funded through the taxpayer via central government, they're funded through council tax contributions, and also by charging for some service such as policing football matches. Okay, so this is my council tax statement for the 1920 year, and what you can see there is the breakdown of Teignbridge District Council. And in the 2019 to 20, 11% of my council tax went to the police. So so £188 of my 1,715, so 11%, was directly given to the police for their work in my council area. And the point I want to make here is that obviously different councils will spend different percentages on the police. But it's worth noticing, if you look at this column here, that there was a 12.7% increase in funding from the council tax from the last year. So as a percentage of my council tax, I paid more last year than I did the year before as a percentage towards the police. Okay, moving on. How is the police made up? Well, the reality is you've got 43 police forces, territorial police forces in England and Wales. So they're divided up within regions. The largest by far is the London Metropolitan Police. That's got 31,175 officers as of 2019. Now at Plymstock we would come under Devon and Cornwall Police. There are about 3,000 police in 2019, and that's the 12th largest force in the country. Okay. However, there are numerous different specialised departments within the police force, and each has its own specific role. Now, I'm going to spend a bit of time on this because it's a really common exam question, and they're often quite big marks. So you get questions that say things like, describe the role of the police. And people are very good at writing a sort of 4 out of 9 mark question, say they protect the public, they arrest, they bring criminals to justice. But knowing how the different departments work allows you to get a bit more detail into those sort of answers. So I'm going to run through some of the various departments within the police to give you an idea of some of the other roles that the police may play. It's quite straightforward. So you've obviously got the bobby on the beat, you know, patrolling the streets, but increasingly now modern policing is far more than just bobbies on the beat. So I've got a list here of various different departments within the police, and this will give you some of the ideas of that role of the police, how more intricate it is. So we could start with CID, the Criminal Investigations Department, and that's the department of the police that deal with serious crimes. So that would be robberies, sexual offences, burglaries, fraud, murders, serious assaults, that sort of thing. You've then got the Serious Organised Crime Agency, known as SOCA, and that particularly deals with undercover work. So they're dealing with, criminal rings. So that would be drug cartels, that sort of stuff. And so that would involve undercover work, physical or technical surveillance. Physical surveillance would be, sitting there watching people. Technical surveillance with monitoring computers, that sort of stuff, CCTV cameras. They'd be involved in witness protection. They do financial investigations to track where the money is going from organised crime. You've then got the drug squad. So the SOCA tackles large-scale drug trafficking, but there'll be local forces. So Devon and Cornwall will have its own drug squad that will deal with specific drug offences in our area. Okay, and that might involve work such as surveillance on local drug dealers, raids on premises, arrests, and working closely with the National Drug Squad. Special Branch. That's the force that's involved with terrorism, and that would also cover work such as firearms or explosives, and they're linked to threats for national security. Then moving on, we've got the Firearms Branch, is what it says on the tin. those will be a specialist team within the regional forces who are trained to participate in operations that require firearms. So Devon and Cornwall will have its own group of policemen that are charged, policewomen that are charged with and trained in the use of firearms. Now, a big department of the police, the traffic department, they're concerned with all aspects of road safety, but they still police all kinds of non-traffic incidents. It's quite complex and multi-layered. So what I've done is given you some example of some of the things that the traffic department will deal with. So, you know, straight away they'll deal with pile-ups and accidents. That's fairly straightforward. They'll also check the vehicles on the road conform to legal safety requirements. So they've got an MOT, the tyres aren't bald, they're roadworthy. They would deal with motoring offences such as speeding, dangerous driving, etc. Obviously breath testing, dealing with drink drive or even drug drive offences. I won't put that in, but you could use that one as well. They would also be managing traffic when roads are blocked by an accident or an incident. And also, this is a key thing to remember, they would be involved in court proceedings to support a prosecution. So if someone is up in court for dangerous driving, drug driving, etc., the police may well be called to act as witnesses. So don't forget that aspect of the police's role. The other group of police that you could look at is the Royal and Diplomatic Branch. They specifically charged with protecting members of the royal family and their residents, and also embassies and diplomats. So, you know, the American embassy, there'll be a UK police force linked to that. Okay, there's also the role of the dog handlers, and quite often students talk about dog handling, but they don't talk about the specific roles that the dog handlers do. So I've outlined these for you here. So it's not, you know, people think that dog handling is just bringing down criminals, but actually it's increasingly more used now in the search for explosives, weapons and narcotics, also for missing or injured people. There's the obviously one I've just mentioned, the tracking and detaining offenders who are on the run, but also they're used for locating dead bodies, blood, and that can be either, you know, those on the surface or are buried. And also airport and port control, you'll always see dog handlers there as well. You've then also got the mounted police. Mounted police are mainly used for crowd control during demos and sporting events, and they impose a police presence in serious disturbances such as riots. And in rural areas, and so this would apply to us in Devon and Cornwall, horses are often used to search wide open spaces. So actually, if you're out on Dartmoor, there'll be some areas where actually you'd cover more area on a horse than you would on by foot. So last few, we've got the river police. So if you're in an area where you've got lots of rivers or coastal waters, there'll be a large section of police that will be involved in these sort of situations. So assisting boats in difficulties, inspecting docks, riverside premises, dealing with thefts of ships, houseboats, warehouses, etc., rescuing people or retrieving bodies from the water, making safe drifting boats or objects that are causing hazards in the water. They might even monitor water pollution. And they will also work with Her Majesty's Revenues and Customs to counter smuggling, which would be an issue for some of us, and as well as searching for suspects and criminals, obviously. Right, now it's important also to realise that different forces will have different priorities depending on their location and demographics. So for instance, we're in Devon and Cornwall, so with a large farming community, you know, we might have sections of our police force that will particularly target agricultural crime. Now, that's something that might be very specific to Devon and Cornwall. The Metropolitan Police will not be targeting agricultural crime. So the other key thing to realise is that different police forces will have different priorities based on their location and their demographics. So, the other key thing you need to be aware of for this AC is how the police link with other agencies within the criminal justice system. So I've set these out for you, and it's really important that you understand how this works. So the first agency the police will deal with, will link with, will be the courts, and they'll do it in this way. as I mentioned previously, they'll give evidence for the prosecution in court, and they'll provide protection as well for vulnerable witnesses. So often there are people being in police protection. That would be the role of the police, obviously, and that's linked to the work of the courts. They will also hold defendants in police cells. So prior to going to court, some people are held in police cells, so the police are liaising there, keeping the public safe, and they're also liaising with the courts. And obviously they will sometimes transport defendants to and from court, although increasingly this is being done by private companies, but it can sometimes be done by the police. Right, when we talk about the Crown Prosecution Service, how do the police work with them? Well, I've alluded to it already earlier on in this PowerPoint, but they will provide evidence for the prosecution of offenders. So all the file, they'll conduct an investigation into the case. They'll hand the files over to the CPS, who will make a decision whether to prosecute or not. But they are responsible, the police, providing the evidence for the Crown Prosecution Service. And again, what will then happen is the police will charge offenders, but in general they will charge them in line with what the Crown Prosecution Service say. So the Crown Prosecution may make the decision that they might get a safer conviction with a manslaughter charge as opposed to a murder charge, so it might direct the police to charge the offender with manslaughter and not murder, to give you an example. How do they work with the Prison and Probation Service? Well, obviously they arrest prisoners who've been recalled to prison for breaching the terms of their licence. So if a prisoner's out on bail, has been told not to go into a certain area and breaks their bail conditions or their licence conditions, the police will be instructed by the probation service to arrest those prisoners and return them to prison. So that's how they work with both the Prison and Probation Service. They also, as a result of Sarah's Law, and you can tie in some of the stuff from Unit 1 here, they will work with the Prison and Probation Service to manage the list of child sex offenders who live in a specific area. They will also work with voluntary organisations and charities, and they do this by referring victims and witnesses to, let's say, victim support or to women's refuges, witness support, etc, etc, etc. Okay, so that is basically the work of the police service. The key thing is, guys, that you know how they're funded, the different groups within the police service, what their core role is, how they work to protect the public specifically, and then also how they interact with the other agencies for social control.